You and the YouTube gods seem to like what I did with the objective markers for 40k video, so I've come up with a new variant that I wanted to share with you. Let's praise the Great Horned One and gather the warpstone for the roll. To celebrate the release of Warhammer's 4th edition of Age of Sigmar, I thought I'd come back to the objective marker videos that I previously did to see what I can do in a fantasy setting. In the last video, I received a comment asking for a Skaven themed objective marker from @05Grimshard. Well, the Underfather has answered, and I hope this is what you had in mind. Jumping straight in, the materials you're going to need for this build are as follows: 2mm cardstock, cork sheeting, modelling compound or sculptor mould, dark green crystal shards, your choice of flock and paints, PVA glue and sealer made from 1 part PVA, 1 part isopropyl alcohol and 5 parts water. Optional additional materials include LED tea lights and green LED bulbs. All of the materials are in the description below, some of which are affiliate links and which will come at no extra cost to you but also help out the channel greatly. So after reviewing the rules, Age of Sigmar uses the same size objective markers as Warhammer 40k does, making the dimension discussion I had in my last video still work perfectly. So rather than making this complicated, the one thing you're going to need to know is that the true radius of our objective markers is going to be 96mm, or 3 13/16 of an inch, depending on how you wish to measure it. We start off in the exact same way, by marking out a 96mm radial circle on our 2mm cardstock for the base of our objective marker. Cutting out the disc can be done with a craft knife and a little bit of patience, but this is YouTube, and we can skip through that with the power of editing. Now the inspiration for this build came from looking at lore online. I loved the artwork of looking at warpstone just erupting from the ground and emitting a bright green light that kind of led to the idea of this magical essence just emitting and pulsing from this ominous green crystal. Now pro painters can do amazing things with painting OSL, but I'm not that good, and I thought, let's why not use the real thing. Once we've cut out the disc, we have two options. The first of which has no lighting and so won't require the next step, but the second, which does have lighting, is still relatively simple and only requires a little bit of extra effort if you do wish to add so much more to your tabletop. Most cheap tea lights that you can pick up from your local dollar store or pound store for my fellow natives will look like this, encased in plastic and fairly horrid looking with no personality and a cheap dull light. Whilst you can use this, you can also pick up very cheap LED bulbs that emit a much brighter light like so. I'd also recommend diffusing the light from the LED by using sandpaper to scratch the outer shell. With little skill, just like me, you can switch out the amber or white LED for a green one. I ordered 10mm bulbs just so that you can see that in the video, but I'd recommend a much smaller size for your builds. Simply just pop off the plastic cover and leave yourself with the bulb and battery housing compartment. Remove the battery, pop out the old bulb and replace it with a new brighter bulb and trim down the excess wire. Once the bulb is switched out, we can then affix it to our base. Now keep in mind to cut out a small hole at the bottom just to allow us to turn the light on and off. Now regardless of whether you've included a light or not, we can paint the centre of the objective marker black, as this is where our translucent warpstone crystals will be sitting. Don't glue down the light fitting just yet, as this will need to be removed when we do the painting step. Now the next step is to build up the terrain of our objective marker, and if you're like me, I like to get a rough idea in my mind as to what I want the objective marker to look like, and then build up from there. Now I'd imagine this to be a bog or a swamp-like environment, maybe on the outskirts of a pop-up settlement that had been formed to mine the warpstone that had been erupting from the ground nearby. But where there's warpstone, others covered it, and are not far behind. We can start by ripping up some cork sheeting and using these to act like the fractured ground being pushed up from the warpstone rising from below. We can then begin to work the modelling compound to create the ground texture for our base terrain. Remember to work fairly fast with modelling compound as it has a short working time. Now we want to leave this to fully dry for at least a couple of hours, but best overnight. And once solid, we can then seal it with a thin layer of PVA glue to create a barrier layer for our paint to sit on. And whilst you're waiting for the modelling compound to dry, why not click the like and subscribe buttons? Go on. Using the paints of your choice, either brush, airbrush or spray paint on your desired look. As this will be a swampy environment, the colour palette that I'm going to be using are greens, browns, yellows and blacks. And now once your painting is done, we can then put the dark crystals in the centre area that we covered earlier. It's always best to dry fit the crystals in first to make sure that you know how many you'll need and in what way they're going to fit them together. Make sure to fill in all the gaps that have been made and to cover the LED completely so that the light refracts through the crystals and looks as though it's coming from beneath. As I said, my objective marker's backstory was that they were in a swamp or bog-like environment with a settlement nearby, so I can add things like broken wagons, barrels and wheels, and other more natural elements like dirty water, vines and other plant life. Now that it's all dry, let's see how it looks on the tabletop. And that's it for another build. Now these objective markers don't just work in Warhammer Age of Sigmar, they also work in 40k. The example could be is that you're on a Necron tomb world and your objective markers are set up there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Are there any other backstories that you could think of that would work with these objective markers? Or are there any other situations or settings that you'd like me to try and build? Now please don't forget to click those like and subscribe buttons, it's going to really help the channel grow to a much wider audience, and if you've enjoyed it, so will others. And if you really love what you've seen, I also have a Patreon page that starts at just $4 a month. Patreon members get access to a huge range of benefits such as the Discord server where you'll find me, monthly prize draws, early access to some of the videos, and plenty of other tools and resources that will be available to you, the link for which is in the description below. I'd like to thank all of the Patreon members so far and the channel producer Danny H. Your continued support means the world to me and I couldn't do it without you. Once again, thank you for watching and I'll catch you in the next video.